Saturday View on Midlands 103. With thanks to Lumclean Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. LumcleanEnergy.com. Have your say. Call 0818 300 103. Text or WhatsApp your Saturday View to 083 3010 103.
And a very good morning to you all. Ronan here with you on Saturday View. Time for you to have your view on what's happening around the Midlands today. But some wonderful stories coming up too, including, you might have heard on Midlands today last Wednesday that Tullamore Tidy Towns Association was responding to a bit of, let's call it vandalism that happened over the bank holiday weekend, where quite a tall tree was basically grabbed and uprooted from a planter box outside Galvin for Men in the town. Now, the incident was captured on CCTV cameras, and on Wednesday, Shane Murray from the Tidy Towns was on with me speaking about the incident, and he put a kind of a friendly appeal out. He said, look, if anybody knows anything and wants to come forward, we'll remove the video from social media. And he was saying this is possibly just somebody out having a good time, and as he said himself, you know what, we probably all did stuff over the years. I'm certainly a generation that grew up when I was socialising that there was no smartphones and cameras. Not that I ever did anything bad anyway, of course. And Shane, of course, didn't declare what he might have done in his youth. But we might be able to put that to him later on, because he'll be here with an update on that story. So looking forward to getting that and seeing where it has gone ever since. Also, if you're planning a trip to Dublin Zoo today, just be aware that there is a protest taking place. There's a number of effectively animal rights groups that are hosting a couple of hours of a protest there today, and they're protesting in principle against the zoo and how it manages animals, and not just Dublin Zoo in particular. Now, they are highlighting a couple of issues that they believe need further investigation, and I think even a TD has got behind and asked for an inquiry on that. But they're also protesting against zoos in general. That zoos, of course, originally, they state, were brought together and formed for entertainment purposes, and they believe that maybe the time is coming that we just forego that and let these animals back into the habitats and where they belong, and stop the breeding of animals in captivity. And that argument can apply to farming and all sorts of areas too. So to get their perspective on it, I'll be joined by Jerry Boland from Roscommon. He's the founder of Animals Behind Closed Doors, to look in and see exactly what is the precise nature of that protest. And I'd love to have your opinion on it too. Will you agree with them? Do you think, is this a worthy protest as well? Or is this something that, the zoo, do you hold it in the highest of standards and it's somewhere that you regularly visit? So, as always, to join the conversation on this morning's show, 083 3010 103 by text or WhatsApp is always the quickest and most easiest way to get me here in studio. You can give us a call on 0818 300 103 either. Nelly, be happy to take your call. And as I say, looking forward to dipping into those stories over the rest of the morning. But first though, could you imagine planning your holiday? And it's probably something a lot of people are thinking of, given the weather is a little up and down, to say the least, at the minute. But imagine if you decided and you looked across the world and you wanted to pick a destination and you said, right, there's a country I've never been to before, but I would like to go to that country for a bit of a break, but also to volunteer. So why would you do that? Well, what better way to meet members of a local community, to soak up a local ambience and atmosphere and really get to know the people that keep our Midlands towns vibrant, and who put all endless hours of hard work into creating some, let's be honest, around the Midlands, incredible events and festivals. I mean, we've just seen the Duro Scarecrow Festival finish up. The Stradbally Steam Festival was on. The Tullamore Show takes place tomorrow. Electric Picnic is happening next week, and that's just naming a couple of things there that have come to mind instantly. But another festival that took place recently was Birr Arts Vintage Week, and it's coming to a close this weekend. But one person came all the way from Australia specifically to volunteer at Birr Arts and Vintage Festival. And she's here this morning to talk to us about that very experience. Now, Diedre Fox from Offaly Volunteer Centre played a pivotal role in this, and it's probably an aspect of volunteering, and indeed what organisations like Offaly Volunteer do, that maybe we don't even see of. So I'm going to bring Diedre in first and just ask her that, is this a common thing, or is this something that is on the rise now? Because I've never actually thought of volunteering if I was going on holiday. I think a holiday is whatever it is, a couple of weeks downtime as well. Diedre, Michele, when did she first get in touch with you about this?
So we heard from Michele as far back as April, and she contacted my colleague Nina And Nina got so excited. She said, this is exactly, a great way to start opening our international ways for people to come and visit our area and spend some time in the community by volunteering. Now, you referred to Shane Murray there. We work very closely with Tullamore Tidy Towns, and we have a lot of international volunteers there as well. And I think for the most part, for the international volunteers, and I'm sure that you will agree with this in some way, Michelle, that there's great camaraderie, there's great fun, and you experience the community and the lifestyle of the community more than you had ever imagined. So when Michelle got in touch with us, she had looked at Birr Vintage Festival and Arts Festival, and she said, yeah, I'd like to do that. So to do it the right way, she registered with us, and we facilitated the conversation then from there. And I think maybe if you ever had the chance to speak to them in Birr Vintage, and if you look at their Facebook page, she certainly went down a great hit and was referred to as one of our brilliant volunteers. So these kind of festivals and these organisations don't exist without the volunteers. And I often explain to a lot of people that volunteering is actually the backbone of a lot of the organisations in Ireland and in Offaly in particular.
Yeah, and we see that replicated. I mean, even things like the Ploughing Championships when they're in the Midlands, again, huge voluntary effort in that, with clubs, with societies, even with the NPA themselves. Tullamore Show tomorrow. I know people who I haven't seen or heard from in months because they're out there and they're working hard to bring events and do that to a town as well.
We
it
will
is
be
fantastic.
Out there as well. Now, Michelle is taking her leave of us tomorrow. She's staying with myself and my family at the moment for just a couple of nights, and so I'll be gone at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I can tell you, I'll just turn up, but the amount of work that had been done in the cookery village, in the cookery competition marquee, is second to none over the last number of weeks. And as I said, I'll turn up and do my bit and think I'm wonderful, but absolutely there are so many incredible people out there. I just take my hat off to them.
When you first put this to Birr Arts and Vintage Week and said there's a volunteer coming from quite a long distance away that would like to work with you for a week, how did they receive it? Or is this something that they've experienced before?
Well, to be fair, I think Michelle had made connection with them first, and then we just facilitated the conversation. And as Michelle explained to me last night, she wanted to go about it the right way so that she would have support as a volunteer, and that, she would be approached in the correct way, and that she would approach the volunteer position in the correct way. So they were so excited to have an international volunteer with them. And I do believe that, we can actually promote an awful lot of our festivals and our organisations, to receive international volunteers, whether it's going to be for 1 week or whether it's going to be a once-off. But we also have a community volunteers programme, and the community volunteers programme is for exactly that. You sign up to the community volunteers programme, we discuss different aspects of what is expected of you for the different roles, and then that's it. Your role is done then when the festival is over, or when the Tidy Towns big clean-up is done. And sometimes people come back. Instead of keeping a long-term commitment, they like to slot in, slot out whenever it suits. So we're promoting a lot of that now at the moment too.
That volunteer in question is Michele Ritchie, who joins us here in studio, has travelled all the way from, where, Michelle, exactly?
Sydney, Australia.
Wow. So, and your first time in Ireland?
Yes, it is.
So,
yes.
I know you have a background in volunteerism at home in Australia as well. When it came to planning your holiday in Ireland, though, what were you looking for in terms of putting yourself out there as a volunteer? And I guess what led you to Birr?
Well, I was planning a trip to Europe. I have friends in Belgium and Germany that I usually come to visit, but I always like to go somewhere different, and Ireland was always on my list of places to visit. And because I travel alone, it's just always nice, either if you don't know some people, if you can somehow get involved in the community. And I'm always interested in meeting people and in being involved in the culture. So I just did a bit of a Google search and came across the iVol website, and actually I originally approached the Cork iVol people, and then they gave me hints on how to search wider in Ireland, because I had a window of time in August that I could help. And I found the Birr Festival, and it was really fit at my skill set, because I have been involved in events in music and film festivals in Sydney, and also I've been doing a course in art history and administration of art galleries. So being an invigilator at an art festival in Birr was, really a good match for me.
I can imagine, Birr, did it meet your expectations?
Oh, it probably exceeded my expectations. It was just lovely. I think it was a bonus, the best thing to be in a small village like that. I looked up the populations at just under 5,000, I think it said. So, and, it was just so lovely that I got to know. The first night of my volunteering was meeting a lot of volunteers, and then over the week I met other people, met some ladies who were into painting, and they invited me to go painting in the castle. Meet at the castle at 10 and meet them for a painting on outdoor, painting session. And then I just kept on bumping into people I knew along the way, or people drive past, bip their horn and wave to me. And
becoming a bit of a
so
local
I think
celebrity.
if I'd volunteered in Cork or one of the bigger cities, you wouldn't have had that experience. So it was just lovely. Or, I'd go to a cafe and see somebody I've met, a few days ago. And it's just, yeah.
Just to say, when you register on the IVOL platform, you have opportunities within a certain catchment area. So because it's a national platform, it means then you can say, well, if you put in art or, whatever, festivals, the list of opportunities that the organisations will post. So Birr Community had posted that they were looking for volunteers for that. So that's how that evolved for you. You registered as a volunteer, so that gave you access to the list of opportunities around the country.
Yes, yeah. And the Cork people were helpful, saying you need to have an Irish address. And so I found a B&B in Birr to say that's where I lived for the week. So, and that was brilliant. And I got to do a variety of things in the art space, helping there and setting up and pulling down chairs and tying banners to poles.
So they actually made you work as well.
Yes,
that's the important thing too.
They gave me a couple of days off, which was nice too. So that was a chance to explore the town and, just...
Have you done this before? Is this how you normally plan a holiday, or is it a relatively new thing for you?
No, not... let me just think. No, I've mainly volunteered in Sydney, but I would have definitely consider it again. I think it's easier probably in an English-speaking country. I did looked at maybe Spain or something like that, but it's just hard to maybe fit in as easily with that. But no, I definitely would do it again, and especially a smaller town, I think would be nice. I think I've in Sydney, when I volunteered for film festivals, you kind of say hello to the volunteers and then you just disappear again and you don't really see them again sometimes. So
I suppose the scale of the event, I mean, even things like the Olympics would be heavily dependent on volunteers. I don't know, people from all over the world come, but very hard to get to know people on an intimate level at something that size. But in Sydney, as you say, you've a long career in volunteering as well. Can you give us kind of a snapshot of some of the groups that you've worked with?
Yes, well, at the moment, I'm involved with a few different groups. There's Oz Harvest, which is a food rescue organisation. I'm a Sydney Greeter, which is part of the International Greeters Association, that we meet people from overseas and take them around our neighbourhood or wherever they want to go. It's a free walking tour. It's not really a tour, it's really just a spending time with a friend. And I volunteer at the Sydney Library of Things, which is a library that doesn't have books. Okay. You can borrow things from there for free as a membership. And I also volunteer at an art gallery, which is suburban art gallery. So,
so I'm going to take you back there. You can borrow things, right? So a library that doesn't contain books, what kind of things are we talking about here? Like a bus, a car, a tin opener?
It's a fantastic organisation. It premises sustainability. So why buy when you can borrow? And they're trying to save things going into landfill. Some people have lots of the same things, house after house. So, and you might only use it once or twice, or only need it once a year or something. So, for example, camping gear. So if you want to go camping, you can come to our place and borrow a tent and sleeping bags, if you want to risk the sleeping bag. Lilo, like airbed type things. If you're having a party, you can borrow a whole lot of party stuff. You can bunting, a gazebo type tent thing that you can set up, glasses, trestle tables. You can borrow tools. So there are some people know them as tool libraries, but they often just have tools that you can borrow.
So it's very kind of, you can see the logic, like a very interesting concept. Do you have, like, is there a little deposit you put on items then? I'm sure you don't just come in and take them.
No, there's a membership, no deposit. Okay. There's a 3-month, 6-month and a year. We suggest people to try this 3-month membership just to see it, because you can borrow up to 5 items for 2 weeks, and you can renew the items if you haven't quite finished with them. So I've borrowed the bread maker and made batches of bread. Some people have had fun with the ice cream maker and food dehydrator. Yeah, so thousands of items. And so for that membership, you get to borrow those items.
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea. And Diedre, I can begin to see that when someone like Michele gets in touch and comes and volunteers in Birr, there's also a whole lot of other ideas, and you're seeing what other countries, other cities are doing too. So I'm sure you're learning a lot from this as well.
Absolutely. Like, I actually really loved the idea of why buy when you can borrow. Because, like, I live in a community, Durrow, and I always call it the Durrow Amish community, because if there's one house is having something, everybody descends and we bring whatever we have. And I just love the idea that if people who are not lucky enough to live in Durrow, if they didn't have the same, it's almost sad, and that they can't have the same celebrations or can't do the same things or experience the same things.
In Sydney, there's a lot of people who live in apartments, so they just don't have the room to store things, and they just might want to. And we try to, not use plastic at parties, so we have glasses, and so rather than throw away,
sustainability is
everything's
key.
Donated, so we don't. There's only probably one thing we've purchased, which is a gurney. It was very popular. Do you know gurney? Like
I know the gurneys.
Yeah. So that was very popular. So we bought one just to help the community with that after all our rain.
Lovely idea. But it's like it's so practical too. Like even from a storage perspective, sustainability, and the stuff that you might only use once a year. It's a bit like a wine opener in my house, a bottle opener. We use it probably once a year. Actually we had a wine bottle opener. We broke it about a year ago and haven't replaced it. So it goes to show you.
And borrow one.
Party animal here. But I suppose Michele. And it sounds like a fantastic experience you've had as well. Are you looking at next year's holidays? Are you looking at coming back to Ireland, or will you look somewhere else?
I was asked, would I come back to the Birr Festival next year? I mean, I'd love to, but look, I think there's other places to go to, and maybe, I'll come back to Birr as a visitor next time. I don't know. I'll see. But no, there's other...
But she's registered with us now, so she's obliged.
You have her now. You'll be getting
we know where you live.
And you were talking about some other little community that has a lovely festival, I think last night.
I was talking ad nauseum about all the things you could do if you came back next year.
There's so much happening.
There's so much happening. And as I said,
it's a long way. It's a long flight. So
volunteers are the backbone.
Absolutely. But I know your work was hugely appreciated. And Diedre was saying actually there is loads of videos up on Facebook on the Birr Vintage and Arts Festival.
They do a wonderful job. I mean, that's been running for 56 years. That festival.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
Shout out to Carolyn and Rachel keeping it going, and all the volunteers.
Well, I'm sure all the thank yous will come back from Birr as well. And Diedre, a final word from yourself as well. I mean, a great example of what can be done, and I suppose it's also to open Irish people's eyes as to what can be done overseas.
Absolutely, yeah. And there is a section on international volunteering, and I don't think it's taken up as much as it should or could. But I'm also more interested in the people who are new communities that are coming in to the county at the moment, and how they can be received. And they've registered with us in Edenderry and Tullamore and Birr, Banagher. It's just so lovely to be able to come together as a community, no matter what your race, colour, creed, and to be able to give back and to enjoy giving back, or to enjoy being together with other communities. You did mention, Michele, that there were a lot of other international people participating, people who are living in Birr for the moment, but that were just very keen to be part of the community.
Fantastic. Yeah, again, sometimes we don't see the huge effort that goes on behind the scenes, yet alone appreciate that some volunteers from Midlands festivals are coming all the way from Sydney, Australia. Well, Michele Ritchie, thank you for coming to Ireland. Thank you for coming on here to talk about your story, and undoubtedly I'd say you'll spark the imagination of many people listening. Enjoy the rest of your holidays, and sure we might see you in Birr again next year. It's Diedre Fox's hand to do it. And Diedre from Offaly Volunteer Centre, thank you so much for that. Thanks this morning. Time for a very short break. After that, we're going to look and try and find out, well, the exact reasons behind a protest that will take place at Dublin Zoo later this afternoon. Right now across the Midlands though, it is 17 degrees.
Whatever the temperature, call to the Total Tiles showroom in Zone A Mullingar Business Park to view over 300 tiles on display. Small in size, big on selection. TotalTiles.ie. Have your say. Call 0818 300 103.
Still to come this morning, we'll have an update on that story from earlier in the week in Tullamore, where sometime over the bank holiday weekend, a large tree was uprooted and ripped out of a planter, and the Tidy Towns Association founded a couple of streets down in Wheeliebin, and an appeal went out here on Midlands 103 on Wednesday morning that if the perpetrators would come forward and maybe just acknowledge the error of their ways, that the video that was posted on social media would be taken down. And Shane Murray, the chairperson, even said, well, if those people would like to volunteer with the Tidy Towns Association, they would welcome that as well. Shane has an update for us on that in about maybe 10 minutes' time, so looking forward to seeing where that one led. But I'm going to bring your attention to another story that I came up with and saw in the last couple of days, and it's around a planned protest in Dublin Zoo today. And it's due to take place, I think, from around 12 or 1 o'clock for a couple of hours. And in general, people are protesting a number of different animal groups and animal rights groups about the existence of the zoo in the first place. Now, there have been some allegations made by a whistleblower, which has led to an investigation by the National Parks and Wildlife Service. Now, the NPWS found no evidence to support 16 of the allegations, while the final allegation was upheld but has since been resolved. Jerry Boland from County Roscommon is the founder of Animals Behind Closed Doors. Jerry very much supports the protest. Now, he's not directly involved in today's protest, but he has described Dublin Zoo recently as an animal prison, and it reflects his broader view that most zoos confine animals rather than conserve them. And Jerry joins me now. Very good morning, Jerry.
Good morning, Ronan. Great to talk to you.
Jerry, just take us through some of the key elements of what you know about today's planned protest at Dublin Zoo.
Well, I honestly, Ronan, I don't, because I'm not involved in the protest at all. I support what they're doing, but I haven't been following the whistleblower side of it at all. I'm probably talking to you today because I've been involved in animal rights advocacy and campaigning for well over 30 years. And going back to maybe exactly 30 years ago, I was involved in a campaign by a group then that I helped to found with other people called the Alliance for Animal Rights. And we campaigned for several years against Dublin Zoo, which was, in a terrible situation at the time financially, but also just in terms of the animals. The polar bears were completely psychotic. Anybody who's of a certain age and who went to the zoo around then will remember them clearly, living in their concrete enclosure, just pacing up and down constantly for, 15 hours a day. So I suppose I'm talking to you just on a more general term in relation to the zoo, if that's okay in relation.
Yeah, so I suppose having formed that Alliance for Animal Rights then back in the 90s and say, if there was clear evidence of maybe a bit of neglect or maybe not best practice, has the zoo kind of sector improved itself over the years in any case, or has lobbying by groups like yourselves made a difference? And I guess what would bring you to still, I suppose, look for effectively the closure of zoos then in 2024?
Well, I acknowledge that there have been, pretty significant improvements in Dublin Zoo over the last couple of decades. But coincidentally, and I hadn't been involved in the campaign for quite a while, Ronan, but coincidentally, and nothing to do with the protest today, I did visit with a colleague of mine, Dublin Zoo, about 3 weeks ago, because I just felt I needed to kind of just acknowledge and understand and see how significant the improvements were. And I have to say that we were there for 3 hours. And it was a deeply depressing experience because although there have been lots of so-called improvements, the reality remains that it is simply an animal prison. Most of the animals have nothing to do. Their enclosures some of them are very, very small. Some of them are much larger than they used to be, but these are large animals that would cover, some of them would cover like very large areas in the wild, and we're in a confined space, and they essentially have nothing to do. And it was a very depressing place, actually, I have to say. So as your listeners would, I know what I'm saying is probably unpopular because Dublin Zoo is a very popular institution. Most of us will have gone there as children. But when I go there and I have a look at the children themselves. And when we were there were it was a very busy day, Ronan. Like they were very, very busy. The zoo was teeming with people, which is good news for them, of course. And because it's summer, loads of families, loads and loads of children. But none of them are remotely interested in having a look at any of the signboards, the significant signboards all around the zoo, giving people information about the animals, where they're from, whether they're endangered or not, their natural behaviours. The information isn't bad, but in the days of, in these kind of digital days and enhanced days, etc., not a single child that I could see looked at any of those boards. They just weren't interested. So the educational element of Dublin Zoo is very poor. And then the main reason that zoos would claim to be in existence today right around the world is for conservation purposes, because, as we all know, there's, the wild is rapidly declining. The wild habitat, the natural habitat all around the world for these animals. So a lot of them are in very great danger of becoming extinct. So zoos argue that through their conservation programs and their captive breeding programs, that they're keeping these species alive and that they'll be able to reintroduce them into the wild in the future. But that's never going to take place, because the future seems to be a situation where the wild is decreasing even more. So what we're doing is we are keeping animals in captivity for their whole lives. Now, some people don't see anything wrong with that. But you see, I'm coming from an animal rights point of view. I see animals as individuals. I see them as just like our dogs, our cats, who have personalities. I don't think it's ethically correct to confine a wild animal or any kind of animal in captivity for its entire life. And the vast, vast majority of all the millions of animals in zoos all around the world will live out their lives in confinement. Very, very few, a tiny, tiny percentage will be reintroduced into the wild.
Yeah, from a historical context, zoos kind of first emerged around 150, 200 years ago. Actually, Dublin Zoo itself first opened in 1831. It's one of the oldest zoos in the world. Is that maybe some of the problem from your perspective, that we've just grown up with them? We just see them as a normal thing, but the argument could be that it's the most abnormal thing out there.
Well, on a broader level, like, we do use and exploit animals. Like, that's what we do as a society, and that's what I've stood against, I suppose, for the last 30 years. And the zoo is just one instance of that. So, people who are using animals in all kinds of ways and eating them, exactly, for instance, they kind of, I don't think they find it easy to make the connection. But when I go there, I just see animals that shouldn't be there, and that I can understand. I could certainly, I'm not completely rigid. I can see that there could be a point in having some kind of animal sanctuary where the animals were there for not a very long period, and that there was a clear route into reintroduction into the wild or into somewhere. But to have elephants and giraffes and rhinos and hippos, etc., and tigers and lions in Dublin Zoo in this climate, in small enclosures, relatively small enclosures, I don't think that's acceptable, because these animals are never going to be released back into the wild. And we could, so it's true that Dublin is an institution, and it's a very popular institution, but the world is changing. And, we all know, we are living in a world which changes very fast in lots of ways, and it seems to be speeding up. And people are now understanding animals. Science is moving ahead of politics, and instead of society, we now understand that animals are complex social, behavioural, emotional beings. And what we've done with them in the past isn't the way that we should be looking at them going forward. That's the way I would see it. So I think it's I see it as largely an entertainment place. It's where people go to spend a few hours with their kids, and there could be a value in that if they were seeing something genuinely educational, and if they weren't being taught a lesson, that it's okay to keep wild animals in captive behind bars, in cages, etc.
Well, the protest is due to take place early this afternoon for a couple of hours. As I said, we don't know whether it's a one-off or whether it's a series of protests planned, but certainly something that is being put on people's radar, and those questions being raised. Where do you think they would lead? Like, is there appetite out amongst the general public or even in politics for people to look at making a change, or to at least explore what other options might be out there?
No, there isn't. I have to say there isn't. But that's, I suppose, my small voice, and others around us. The way it takes a long time to change things. So there is a growing movement among people. There's a growing awareness because, for instance, I've been vegan for 30 years. So I've seen a massive change in people's behaviour in relation to veganism, for instance, over the last 5 years. So things are changing quite rapidly on the ground. And I think normally what happens is that pushes up. So, but at the moment, I would say there's no possibility of Dublin Zoo changing. But I think in the future that it will have to change. And it'll have to cease keeping these large wild exotics and turning it into some kind of, functional and ethically acceptable animal sanctuary where maybe, species of, endangered animals from Ireland are kept and captive breeding programs, and they're released back into the wild in Ireland. So there are opportunities for it, but at the moment I don't see anything changing. We'll see what comes out of this protest and out of these allegations, I suppose.
It's funny when you mention kind of native Irish animals. It's not that far back that a former head of government mentioned about potentially rebreeding wolves in Irish habitats as well. So Jerry Boland, though, the founder of Animals Behind Closed Doors and based in Roscommon, thank you so much for that this morning. And I say just a story to kind of keep your eye on and see where those protests lead. And I'm sure now if we contact Dublin Zoo, they'll probably come on and talk about how the highest standards that they operate to, and probably be able to do comparisons with other zoos across the world as well, and I absolutely appreciate that. Over 1 million people visit the zoo on an annual basis, but as Jerry points out there, how long might that continue for? And there are quite a few people who would say that maybe it should be reevaluated and look at how those animals could be housed in a slightly different way as well. But let me know what you think. But of course this doesn't apply to just large exotic animals, or as Jerry suggested, there are possibly Irish breeds that maybe need to be conserved. But also somebody has texted in and said that our new neighbour has a white pedigree dog in a large cage in his garage since he moved in. The poor dog never gets out for a walk or a run. Now in the last few days he has another black dog in the cage. I cringe every time I pass his house and look into the garage. And that's it. Like sometimes we do see animals everywhere kept up, maybe kept indoors or kept in cages or kept tied all day. It is a kind of, unfortunately, a factor of modern life. And we all know in the pandemic the levels of ownership of dogs and cats and even pigs, believe it or not, pigs in private houses went through the roof and caused huge issues then for animal sanctuaries and the likes of the ISPCA and that type of thing. So this is a thing. Are we too prone to keeping animals locked up, unfortunately? Let me know. 083 3010 103, the text or WhatsApp number. After the break, though, let's find out the latest in that story where a couple of trees were uprooted on the main street in Tullamore during the week.
Saturday View on Midlands 103 with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. lumcloonenergy.com.
On Wednesday, I was sitting in for Will Faulkner in Midlands Today, and I heard from Shane Murray, chairperson of Tullamore Tidy Towns, and it was in light of an incident that happened over the course of the bank holiday weekend. Here's a little bit of what Shane had to say last Wednesday morning.
Two young lads, now we all did silly things when we were young. I'm sure they're probably nice young lads, but we're walking home after a good night out, and one of them decided to just grab the tree and basically do a runner with it. He dragged it along the road up William Street, turned right down into Harbour Street, ran down Harbour Street with it, and eventually it was found in a wheelie bin just at the end of Harbour Street, in the right there.
What are you appealing to people to do? Do you want people to share the video, see if anybody maybe knows who they might be, or even if the culprits might come forward or something? What are you looking for?
Well, listen, we don't want anyone, as I said, we're all young and silly and did silly things, and we all grow up. It's just to let these lads know that, it's not really acceptable. If you come forward, we'll and let us know who you are. There's a slight cost to it. Maybe come out and volunteer with us for a couple of hours, and we'll take the footage down.
So that was Shane's appeal last Wednesday morning, and that CCTV footage was captured just outside Galvin for Men and kind of showed the people who had done this, and carried quite a sizable tree away down the street, as Shane had said. Shane joins me now, though. He has a bit of an update on this. Good morning, Shane.
Hey, good morning, Roland.
So, Shane, following that kind of appeal that went out on Wednesday, what happened in the aftermath?
And it was quite amazing, the coverage that it got. It was really, it was spread far and wide. But it was the Midlands 103 Instagram account that the poor young lad happened to see it. So he called me. He was very contrite and upset. He was out having a good night with the lads, and things got the better of him, and I don't know if he was doing a Basil Fawlty on it. He might even know who Basil Fawlty is, but he decided it might be fun to pick up the tree and hit someone over the head with it, just having a bit of a joke and a laugh. But he realised what he did was very wrong, and he apologised for it. He has paid for the tree, and he's going to come and volunteer with us for a few nights a week.
Fantastic. And we have to commend the person involved too, because it takes a lot to admit what you've done, and particularly if you probably have a little bit, there could be embarrassment attached to it as well. But fair play, as you say, for both kind of compensating you financially, but also volunteering as well. And I mean, from a Tidy Towns perspective, that must be great to hear that somebody else is going to see and get insight into the great work that you do.
It is great, Ronan, and when you consider this young lad's age, for him to make that phone call was a huge step. Like you couldn't recognise him from the video, so it was only he knew who he was, his friends knew who he was. So to make that phone call and make that step forward, it's pretty big of the young man. And fair play to him.
Absolutely. And I think we should commend Tullamore Tidy Towns too, because you didn't come on giving out and accusing people. You left it very open there that if the person or persons involved wanted to get in touch, that you would be hospitable to them anyway and look at progressing things rather than trying to do anything to interrupt. I think it's a great story. Lovely to hear it coming to a conclusion in such a positive way. And as I say, undoubtedly you'll be delighted to have an extra set of hands for all your voluntary work. Thanks a million for that, Shane.
Thank you very much, Ronan. I just want to give a quick shout out to all the Offaly County Council staff, the outdoor staff who come out in the morning before we get up out of our bed and have the town looking pristine for us. Because they do a great job day in, day out for us. So just to thank them, Lockie and the lads that come out and do that, and Jason.
Absolutely. Well said there. That's Shane Murray, chairperson of Tullamore Tidy Towns, bringing that story to a nice conclusion. So if you're going out and around Tullamore now or any of the towns in the Midlands this evening or tonight or over the weekend and you're thinking of doing something like that, maybe don't, because you know what? Sometimes people are watching and it's amazing what a bit of a public campaign can do. That video, of course, has been taken down as promised by Tullamore Tidy Towns, and it's gone off the Midlands 103 socials. And that's actually how I got a hint that maybe the story had come to conclusion, because somebody approached me yesterday and said, I saw a video that you were in talking about a tree being uprooted, but I think it's gone now. So that led me to follow up. So there we go. And Tullamore Tidy Town sounds like has another volunteer. So look, hats off. Well done to everybody involved. Any time for me to wrap it up for today, just to say a big thank you to all today's contributors, Diedre Fox and Michele Ritchie. Michele, of course, all the way from Sydney, Australia, came over to Ireland for a couple of weeks, but more specifically to volunteer at Birr Vintage and Arts Festival for a week, and had a fantastic experience, and has really shown people over here to what can be done, and brought some great ideas for things like the library of things, where you can borrow and anything except the book in it for those little events. So really interesting ideas and nuggets that we could look into too. Thanks to Jerry Boland, also the founder from Animals Behind Closed Doors. Jerry's based in Roscommon, and he was speaking about in general the issues about having animals held captive, and this of course is on the backdrop of a planned protest up at Dublin Zoo for a couple of hours this afternoon. Jerry's not directly involved, but as he said there, very much supports the idea and wants people to begin to really look and examine at why we keep animals caged up. And I'd say some of you text in saying that you're seeing evidence of that around your own towns and villages, of people with dogs and pets and other animals that are largely kept captive all day, every day as well. So definitely something that is becoming a bit of an issue out there, maybe always has been. But thanks to Jerry anyway for his contribution on that, and to Shane Murray there for giving us that lovely update on that story from during the week. And it shows, despite it all, there are still great people out there, and say commend that person for getting in touch with them and offering their services to volunteer as well. Keep an eye out, 8:15 this evening, 4x400 relay. We could have an Irish medal, we could, let's hope. I'll talk to you all soon.